Welcome to Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm joined by Anthony Haggerty, Laura Bradburn and JP Mason on a day where Celtic basically went out with a whimper. They went out with a whimper, Tony. Are they players hurting enough for you?
Nope. I said it after Ross County and I'll say it again, I'll reiterate it. This club is lost from top to bottom. See giving your all. It's a prerequisite for any Celtic player. I implore MD to tell me, did that look like a team that given their all, that wanted to make Rangers go and win the title? No, it didn't. And they just looked as if some of them are elsewhere, their heads are elsewhere. And see if they are elsewhere, do us a favour, go, leave, go now, go and find that utopia that you think exists after Celtic. That's fine. On you go. But, today was just shambolic, really. They played okay in the first half, but I'm going to pick up now, but taking Turnbull off again. You saw his face. He's raging. Now, better watch it. This guy doesn't hand in a transfer request. Because he's just so, disillusioned with it all. They really need to get a grip.
That was only 62 minutes. And the big thing with that as well, we've done this all season, we change like for like, Tony. It's not as though we're looking at that saying, right, in the second half, things have died a death here, let's actually change it up. We just change personnel like for like. And that's frustrating because, Rogic goes in there, you think, well, you're expecting him to have more joy from the same amount of possession and the same players around about him. And I just think that, it's been an issue with Celtic all season. You're saying they're lost. We've said on this podcast already, it's not about losing the dressing room. The dressing room is lost, but it's not just the dressing room, is it?
Whole club's lost from top to bottom. Honestly, Laura spoke off air, and Laura made a good point there. I said, it's just the way this whole campaign's gone. The nature of the even a semblance of a title challenge. That's just microcosmic of the season, the way everything has gone. And do you know what? See, you thought that the rebuild was, something you didn't want to do. This rebuild's massive.
Mm-hmm.
It really is massive. It's just grown arms and legs after that. Seriously, the Celtic are in a worse state than I actually thought. And that's a worry because you've got, 104, 105 days to the Champions League qualifiers. I think the best thing Celtic could do now is get a new management team in now, right now, tonight, at some point, or tomorrow, or by the end of the week. Because the more time you waste, the more time you're not going to qualify for the Champions League. That's time lost.
Absolutely.
You need a new management structure in now to start this rebuild.
Some of the names that have been mentioned, Anthony, just going back to that very point that you made during the week as well, some of the names that have been mentioned are already attached to nations who will be involved in the Euros. So how on earth are you going to be able to assess a squad and bring in the necessary reinforcements, which, by the way, that there are quite a few required, and actually, put over your own philosophy to that team in such a short space of time? We have an opportunity for a new management team to be in there assessing exactly what we're seeing for the remainder of the domestic matches this season. And as we said, I think at half-time, it might have been the pre-match, have a look at Ajeti, have a look at Bacchus. Are these guys, are we going to write them off? Are we going to write £10 million off and see how much we can pull back in and shipping these guys out? Or are we able to actually get a player out of them? Now, JP, you're sitting there patiently. You're looking gutted. I think we're all gutted. We've seen this. We knew the day would come. We knew the day was coming. But it's the nature, isn't it, JP? It's the nature in which we have surrendered this title.
Yeah, I think, when you ask me for a prediction, I'm never one for predicting games, certainly not live on air. But my heart said 1-0 in the second half, and that's what I said I thought would happen. But my head was saying 0-0, and I didn't want to put that negativity out there, but that was what I was thinking, and that's what's happened. There was a lot of empty jerseys out there in the second half. Misplaced passes, lacks, It really did sum up our season, because there we go. They haven't even kicked the ball. We've just handed it to them. It's that if anything could sum up our season, it would be that. But it's all about how we respond now, and it's quite strange to be a Celtic fan who's lived through a time where we have stopped a Rangers team winning 10 in a row, and then being a Celtic fan who has watched a Rangers team stop us winning 10 in a row. It's just like, that's very, very surreal for me to be in that situation. But I've tasted defeat before many times growing up, and I just want to, in the words of the song, I just want to be back next season, win, lose or draw. I don't care. I just want to be back at the grounds, regardless of what's happening.
Laura, I mean, we've covered every kick of the ball, every single kick of the ball this season. More lows than highs. Obviously, you joined us on the matchday team for the Scottish Cup. It was almost as if up to that point in December, the club were just hanging on to almost gift Lenin a final hurrah. We should have made a change before then.
Yeah, who knows where we would be now, because although we didn't actually score a goal, there were certainly signs that with time we probably could have been playing much better football if we'd made the change earlier. I've got to say though, I'm quite surprised at how I'm feeling after it all, because I was very much in agreement with what JP had said on previous podcasts, that this season more than any other, football's been put into sharp perspective by what else is going on in the world, and therefore I kind of felt it's not hurt as much as it would do. But sitting here now with it done, and with the manner in which we've just sort of, as we've said, given it away in such a lacklustre manner, you can't help but feel completely and utterly deflated. It's never a nice feeling at the best of times, but to see a Celtic team out there with such a lack of passion, such a lack of drive, when there are four of us sitting here and numerous other contributors and thousands of people who comment on our shows every day, who would all care more in their little finger than a lot of those players seem to care today. It just beggars belief, and leaves me, for once in my life, short of a word to say. I'm gutted.
I mean, there's a whole range of emotions, and obviously we've picked this season apart all during the campaign. And one big thing that really astonished me was the comment, and I know Jim always brings this up because I wouldn't let it go, was a comment made by Neil Lennon talking about culture. Now, you don't change a culture like a flick of a switch. And it looks, and it's pretty clear that, changing the management team is just the first start of the recovery of Celtic, because there's a deeply embedded culture in that side, and it's not the culture that we would expect from a Celtic team. And I think I'm going to go back to Frimpong's comments that this season was normal. He didn't get it, and there's plenty of other Celtic players in jerseys today that just don't get it.
Listen, nobody's got it from the get-go. From the minute they crashed out to Ferencváros in the Champions League was the time to get it. Because you crashed out a major tournament, and then you just thought, right, you know what? We can't let this happen in the title. We have to do what we can to guarantee the 10. And they didn't. They just let it. They let the chain pull out the station, and they just failed to jump on it. And it was as early as that you could see, you seeing the evaporation of a culture, because they never put up a fight against a terrible Ferencváros team. They weren't even bang average, they were terrible. And then the Celtic supporters were starting to point these things out. The Celtic supporters have been pointing these things out long before that. The Rangers games before that, the loss in December, the cup final, where they should have lost, but it was only Fraser Foster that kept them from losing that. These were all signs that, the culture, as you say, was cracking. It seemed it was coming apart, or there was, things happening that, that you had to be on your guard. I said as well, Rangers threw every resource they could at stopping the 10 and fashioned a decent team who have gone the distance, but they've not had a challenge from Celtic. And that's shameful. It's absolutely and utterly shameful. And if you can see my hands doing strange things, I'm patting my golden retriever on the head. Bangers and all sorts of fireworks and all outside my window. I've got a golden retriever at my side and a wee chihuahua underneath my table here that I'm leaning on. They're just fighting, so yeah, that gives you an idea of what we're already putting up with. But so it's utterly shameful. But from top to bottom, Celtic this season, I mean, so many people will have so many questions to answer in years to come, because the fans will want answers as to why it came apart at the seams the way it did, and they deserve answers, because people spent 600, 700, 800 quid to watch nothing when they were told that they were tooling up to win this mythical 10. They've done nothing to justify those words, to say that they put in a challenge absolutely horrendous. It's been, just horrendous to watch. And as you say, you've been there every kick of the ball, and it's deplorable, to be honest, deplorable.
You know, Stephen Wilson comes in on YouTube, and if you are watching on YouTube, we will continue to cover every single kick of the ball when Celtic start to rebuild what has been a catastrophic downfall this season. Stephen Wilson, this game sums up the season. No one up for the challenge and literally handing the title over. You're looking at the stats. I think I'm right in saying we had 27 attempts at goal. JP, 27 attempts at goal. No cutting edge. Again, you know, the substitutions have baffled me all season. I think it baffled David Turnbull when he got, hauled off with half an hour to go. He's one of our most creative players. There's a culture, and Neil Lennon has gone, but the entire coaching staff remain. I spoke about how impressive John Kennedy was during a press conference on Friday, not as a football coach. Obviously, we need somebody to come in with a philosophy, but we also need someone to come in who absolutely gets what is required here at Celtic, because if you don't, then we could be staring at a season next season. When you look at this rebuild, JP, that it could be a couple of seasons before that pendulum swings back in the direction of Celtic Park. What's your biggest fear in relation to that, in respect of the new management team coming in?
My biggest fear is that we don't make the right appointment, because it's such a huge. This is probably the biggest managerial decision potentially in our lifetimes, because if you don't get this right, then it does potentially set us back. We can't afford to give a new manager full control, and that's what he deserves, and that's what he should get, and a budget to then that become a failure, after a season or a season and a half or whatever. So that is my biggest fear, is that happening. With regards to what's happening elsewhere, when a team from their side of the city stopped us winning 10 in a row in 1990, when we stopped them winning 10 in a row in 1998, what happened after that was, a couple of years of them winning the league, and then unprecedented dominance from us, 15 out of 20 titles. Do I think that's going to happen as a switcheroo? No, I don't. But I do think that it's massively important that we make an appointment that puts us in good stead throughout every aspect of the club, not just the first 11 on the pitch. Things that knock on to the youth, and that allows us to bring through youth development and make our own squads, make our own players.
Laura, we have all had tipping points this season, haven't we? And, famously, Jim Orr and I think Lawrence Connolly were the final two to tip. They were hanging on and hoping that Neil Lennon could still turn it around. Mings was back in October. When you're looking at who's to blame, where do you reckon the blame lies?
If I want to be really honest about it, after the Scottish Cup final, when he was announced, I just thought it took away from that victory for me a little bit. It signalled that no matter what we think of Lennon as a former player and what he did in his first spell as manager, nobody, even the biggest, most ardent Lennon fan, can say that he is anywhere near a step up or even on par with Brendan Rodgers. And so what it indicated to me was, at the very least, we weren't looking to get back to the levels that Rodgers was at. We were happy to go with Lennon and see where that took us, maybe close to the 10 on a budget. And so you can talk about games this season that we all had our tipping points, and certainly there came games this season where I thought, surely this is it, this can't happen. The Ross County exit in the League Cup, the game that I was on, or I came on after, was it St Mirren when we get beat 2-1. There's a couple other games I can think about. There's been so many, but certainly if you want me to be totally honest about it, it was the minute we appointed him permanently. It just signalled such a lack of ambition and such a lack of drive to try and expand the lead that we had. It's something that as a club we have always struggled with. Instead of taking advantage of the gap and taking advantage of the lead that we have, we tend to rest on our laurels until we go, oh, this isn't going right, we need to do something, and by the time we do realise it and try and fix it, it's usually too late.
Now, there's a point coming in. There's various points coming in. So obviously, I am today's sniper and I'm trying to keep up with some of them. Steve Letford, you're commenting on YouTube. If you haven't done so already, Steve, click the subscribe button. Who among us questioned the signings of Duffy, El Yunusi and Ayeti? And I think when we look at that, the big question for me, Anthony Haggerty, would be, was Neil Lennon given the tools required to do this job this season?
I think the more you look at it, the more you think probably not. You analyse this and think, well, I say that the last time I was on, I did a kind of compare and contrast exercise with the 2011 players that he signed and the ones that were signed in the past year or so. You know, and there was a big difference in terms of height, also a big difference in terms of quality. Now, you know, only Neil Lennon has the answers to these questions. Did he sign those players? He's probably signed a non-disclosure agreement, so you might never know. But if it's Nicky Hammond and Peter Law that's signing these players, then they've done the club a gross disservice, mismanagement. You know, getting back to Laura's point as well, when Lenin was appointed after the cup final, everybody just kind of took a sharp intake, and it kind of spoiled that moment because they were, you know, they wanted Celtic to show their ambition again. Look at the levels they reached under Rodgers, unprecedented levels of domestic success. They wanted that run to continue. Now the board have a stark choice. Do they do that again, or do they undersell the club with an unambitious new management structure? You know, you only need to come on here and see the many people that are commenting, the subscribers and the people that watch the numbers. People care. They care about this. They care about this club. How can those at the top not see how much the supporters care, how much it's hurt them this season to relinquish the 10? You know, it meant everything to the supporters because they hadn't done anything in Europe for ages. So domestic dominance and winning that coveted 10 meant a lot. You know, so they really have a stark choice. Can they sit and watch that and say, right, have they got the stomach for a rebuild for a start? Got a bottle for the rebuild? We'll soon find out who they appoint as the manager. But they can't sit there and think after that, you know, what you're hearing, that Kennedy could be a serious contender. No chance. Now they have to cast their net wider now. I keep saying it. We have to raise the bar here. If you really want, you know, because you could be looking at a period of Rangers dominance that you touched upon there. But when Rangers lost the 10 and Celtic stopped at 10, they went out and got Dick Advocaat. Did you see that, JP?
Yeah, they did that.
Straight out and got Dick Advocaat. A name, ambition, and they won the title back for the next 2 seasons.
And a treble as well.
Yeah, and a treble as well, yeah. Treble and a double, I think he won. Mm-hmm. So, you know, that's the challenge now facing the Celtic board. Go and get a manager of that stature, a big name that the fans are fed up telling you who they are and their availability. Yeah, the Euros might come into it if it's somebody like Roberto Martinez. Fine. Okay, I get that. But at least let them start to work, or let them go to work from tonight, tomorrow, whenever. But tell the supporters what direction they're heading in and what the plans are. You can accept losing the title, but they can't accept this abyss that they seem to be in now. And it is an abyss because we seem to be, well, in the words of talking heads, we're on the road to nowhere at the moment until somebody tells us where we're going.
he just done that. Sorry, Paul. See, just on the subject of appointing Neil Lennon at the Scottish Cup final, at the stage of the Scottish Cup final. See if Lennon was a pundit at that point, and it was not Neil Lennon, but a person with Neil Lennon's CV at that point. And if Neil Lennon was asked the question, "What do you think of X person becoming the Celtic manager at this point?" I'd like to know what Neil Lennon's answer would be on that. A relegation to Bolton and a promotion from the Championship to the Premier League with Hibs. Would he say at that point, "Yeah, I think that guy's a great..." Okay, he's had previous experience as a manager of Celtic, but based on his history before that, what would he say as a pundit? I'd be interested to know that.
No, you're right. And again, we do seem to get a lot of comments like the one I'm just going to bring up by Jim G. Everyone was happy at the end of the transfer window. I remember being on here and it was all positivity. But, I mean, if you strengthen the squad, and we've said this before, the squad wasn't depleted other than Fraser Forster. It wasn't depleted. Yeah, we can start looking at Johnny Hayes wasn't given another contract. Simunovic was allowed to leave. Well, Simunovic has still not got a contract. So people who think that these guys would have waved a magic wand and would have shored up that leaky defence, I would need to question that. And you look at the stats in relation to Johnny Hayes. Johnny Hayes was not an incredible left back. It's almost as if there's a revisionism on that. So I didn't think he was a big loss. I didn't think Simunovic, in a great scheme of things, was a massive loss either. Obviously, we didn't foresee the injury issues that we were going to have and other issues in terms of the central defensive partnerships or lack of that we've had to suffer this season. But when you're looking at the fact that we kept all our star players, or so-called star players, Jim, and we brought in 6 others, and we've obviously supplemented that by bringing in a 7th. And you look at where we were bringing the players from. I mean, we brought 3 of them in from the Premiership, and we've since brought in a 4th from the EPL. We brought in a Greek international goalkeeper. So it's not as though, and we brought in one of the rising stars in Scottish football, who has been one of the only bright spots of an otherwise forgettable season. So I don't think that we can give fans a hard time. I don't think you can give podcasters a hard time for calling it as they saw it at that time. But when you put that collection of players into a scenario which it very quickly became evident was an unhappy camp, and Neil Lennon spoke about it himself after the Ferencváros game, then you've got an issue. And we started talking about these issues as early as that game back in August, Ferencváros. So it's not as though, come November, December, we're still walking about thinking we've had a great transfer window. On paper, it looked great, but very quickly it became evident that it wasn't great. And I think you've got to mention that. Then there was an opportunity when you started seeing the cracks beginning to show to make the change. And this is the biggest frustration for me. And I'll come to you first, Anthony Haggerty. These guys at the helm of Celtic that make the big decisions and get paid the big bucks to make those decisions. They had a decision to make some time ago and they failed to do it. So when I threw the question out to Laura, who is to blame? Ultimately, yes, we've criticised Neil Lennon, we've criticised players, but ultimately the blame lies with the outgoing CEO. And I think that the timing of his announcement was correct. He had to go. The final nail in the coffin was definitely the Dubai saga, which you'll continue to look back on that. We dropped 12 points in January. In 1 month alone, we dropped 12 points. That's the situation, and the way we dealt with that situation and the aftermath and the attitude of people like Neil Lennon when he comes in bullish to face the press. At that point, I knew today was coming. Up to that point, I'm the ever optimist. I think that we can turn it around. You look at the players we've got there, but I've got nothing. I've got absolutely nothing from this team this season. You've got Edouard today, undoubted class, game changer. We're going to see him leaving the club and excelling somewhere in Europe. We're going to see him playing for France at some time in the future, I'm sure. But see, today, you're looking at what he's trying to do, the tippy-tappy stuff, the lack of decisiveness. And you think to yourself, that squad of players, I said the heart ripped out of it. The soul hasn't been there all season, Anthony Haggerty. And it's going to take a very special man or management team to come in and turn this round now. Yeah,
I mean, we've been calling it for each. The heart and soul's been ripped out that club. The culture's been ripped out that club. And you start at the top, and you work your way down from the board first team management, first team players. It's been a total collective, the way that this has just collapsed around about them. And whatever those mitigating circumstances are, the fans deserve the right to know. Somebody has to come out and explain how this has gone pear-shaped in such a short space of time. But it has, inexplicably, from a so-called position of strength, and now you're facing a major rebuild. And got to be honest as well, it's just touched upon it there. Going to take a manager of some fibre, head coach or director of football, to come in and want to turn this around, who feel confident in their own ability to do that. But those coaches are definitely out there. Those managers with experience and, managers in the highest bracket are there. Go and find them if you're seriously intent on taking Celtic back to where you want them to be. You see, if you're not, you will end up with a Jack Ross or a Steve Clark. And that's not those guys have managerial ability, but it's just not what the Celtic supporters crave at this moment in time. They want somebody big to come in and do what Brendan Rodgers did. And I know that people say, "Oh, you've only had one bad season," but yeah, it's a season that meant so much to everybody. Can't overstress that. So that's why it hurts so much, and they just want to be sure that the board are ambitious, like and their ambition matches the supporters. Because at this minute, I don't think it does.
You see that, what you said there, Tony, and I totally agree with that. People say you've had one bad season. This season has the potential to set us back for several seasons, and that's the concern. We've been left with what's going to be a depleted squad in the summer. We have absolutely no vision. It's as though we don't know where it's going. There's no master plan. There's no game plan. We have a recruitment team who can't recruit effectively. We have a youth development system that's not working. So, yeah, one bad season, but how long is it going to take to turn that round? Now, even the mention of Europe now, I see that as light years away. I'm now thinking we need to get our backyard in order before we even think about European qualification. But it's so important to be there, simply because of the financial element, particularly after COVID. Now, Laura, I've been critical, as has many of the contributors on ACSOM all season, in relation to some of the decisions or lack of that have been made. Do you think Celtic know who the next manager is? We've made that approach, and that process could be brought forward, because otherwise, as Tony has said for the last several weeks, we're running out of time to prepare for next season.
Yeah, I hope there's something in the works, because that at least would suggest that there's a plan going forward. We've seen nothing so far that suggests there is a plan, and at least if there was some semblance of that in place, then that would at least signal that there's work being done to put us in the right direction. I'm in agreement that if there is somebody there, they should be brought in sooner rather than later. What I don't want us to do is now make it too much of a panic appointment too early, because although we do need somebody in as soon as possible, you still want that to be the right person. And as JP said, that's probably going to be the biggest decision we've had in the last 20 years, if not longer. But to go back to what the commenter said about, all the positivity around the new signings at the start of the season, what else are you going to do? Shane Duffy was not the player that we have seen play for Celtic, and you can be excited about a player coming in based on what you've seen. You can then observe them playing for your club and decide that actually you don't like what you've seen, either because you didn't know them as well as you thought you did, or because they haven't been playing the way that they should have been playing, and you're allowed to change your mind. Nobody can tell me that Duffy, Elyounoussi, Rajetti have put in performances that are worthy of the Celtic shirt this season. So I'm allowed to be excited when they come in and think they're going to be the reason that we are going to improve going forward, and then go, actually, no, you're playing pretty rubbish. And I'm going to say so. But yeah, back to the manager thing. I hope there's somebody in place sooner rather than later. I hope that the plan is to make some wholesale changes and to do it as soon as possible, because like we're all chirping on about less than 100 days to go to the Champions League qualifiers, and if we're still sitting in June or July without any further knowledge of what we're going to be doing next season, then it's only going to be a recipe for disaster.
JP, I'm going to come to you for a second. Thinking back to the day that we unveiled Brendan Rodgers as a manager, and looking back, you know, the threat or the challenge that we had back then is nowhere near as real as what we're now facing. And you look at the level of manager we brought in back then, and it's making me believe that is the level of manager we require. Now, Moravchik 25 always comes in with sensible and balanced comments, so thanks for getting involved. Martinez and Maloney after the Euros, but get Damien Duff in on Monday. And what I'm going to ask you is, do we have that ambition as a club at this moment in time?
Well, the ball's firmly in their court, isn't it? It never has a support been so expectant and so kind of, with our hands up going, what are you going to do? You've seen what's happened here. It's time for you to respond. But see, guys, go back to Jim's comment as well about the signings before I go on about the manager. Yes, the players that came in, nobody was being negative about them. But see, as soon as you start to find out that those might not be the manager signings, that's when you start to get concerned, because there's an immediate disconnect there, because you're going, well, that's not the guy. These aren't the players the manager wanted. Therefore, I'm going to go to Kevin Graham for an analogy here. It's like when your mate sets you up with a girl and you go on a few dates with her, but your heart's not in it. And you're not going to treat her as well as the girl that you actually fancy. And that's it in a nutshell. Has Lenin been as passionate and as invested in these players that have come in as he would have been had they been his players? Now, I know we were told that Ayeti was his player, but we were told that. I don't know if that's true.
Well, CJP, I think you look back, you go further back, because obviously these things unravel, like you say, and you can only call it at that particular time. How good was the transfer window? Of course, we're going to question that because we're commenting on every move that Celtic make. But if you even go further back than that, when we've spent £7 million on Chris Jullien and 3+ on Bolingoli, and we've got £10 million worth of talent sitting on the bench in a European qualifier, and then you start asking yourself, well, if that's the case with this summer's transfers, JP, was it the case back then as well? Were these players foisted upon Lenny? He didn't fancy them to such a degree that a natural left back, love him or loathe him, because we know what happened since then, is available, yet we play Callum McGregor at left back in such an important European game. And my only memory really of McGregor playing full back, I think he stepped in for Tierney when he broke his jaw in the Scottish Cup final, and I think he did okay, although he almost sold a goal that day. Another one was at Ibrox in a forgettable 1-0 defeat against Rangers. So to choose, when you've got somebody fit who's just come in for £3 million plus, to choose to make that point as far back as that game would show that these issues have been there. But it's like you say, if you don't fancy that player, and I mean that in the sense of their ability, JP, if you don't fancy that player, then that disconnect exists immediately. And I just think it's been I called it the perfect storm pretty early on in the season. And that's exactly what it turned out to be. Salvaging anything from a Scottish Cup win, a lot of people say as well, it's only giving John Kennedy more of an opportunity to throw his hat in the ring. Kennedy says he's not up for the job, he's just concentrating on the game. He's giving you stock answers there. But, I mean, let's not ignore anything. And there has been discussion in relation to a guard of honour. I'm going to ask you the question about a guard of honour. We're playing Rangers, right? And there's a question for me, JP, I'll come to you first. There's a question for me around class. Is it a lack of class not to do it? I mean, I joked tongue-in-cheek the other week there saying we shouldn't wear the hoops, we should wear the old black strip and give them a guard of honour. But, I mean, is a lack of class not to do it? I know that Celtic fans will be frothing at the mouth at the moment at the very suggestion, and I understand that.
Well, I had a conversation with my pal Stephen yesterday, and he, a massive Celtic fan, and I've really enjoyed getting to know him over the last year. And he said that he was firmly of the thinking that he would be like, no, absolutely no way. And then he had one conversation with a girl at work who used to be Paddy McCourt's babysitter. There you go. And she said, no, absolutely, we should be the bigger club or the bigger people and do it, because why would we want to, just go, well, they did it to us, so we'll do it to them. I'm now firmly of the belief that we should do it, and then hopefully go and beat them. But on the evidence of today, that's unlikely. But I might get shot down for it, and there'll be loads of people maybe thinking, no, that's crazy, we shouldn't do it. But no, I think we should, because I wonder if Tommy Burns was in charge, what would he do? And I think that's what he would do.
JP, that's a very interesting point at the end there. D Boyle, no way, says D, coming in from YouTube. Strange Love, the Doctor, they deserve a Guard of Honour, in your opinion. And Autumn Glow, who comes in regularly, says, no, it's the Rangers, no Guard of Honour, end of. Laura, I'm going to throw it over you. I think you've got an opinion on this.
Well, I do have an opinion of sorts, in that I couldn't care less either way. I mean, when Rangers, if they ever did give us a Guard of Honour, if they did do it, I wouldn't be sitting thinking that's brilliant, they've had to give us a Guard of Honour. It doesn't really register with me, because it's so orchestrated and so sort of, a show for the cameras, if you like, one way or another. I don't think I would take any satisfaction from it. I don't think I would be particularly upset by it. But I'll thank JP for bringing up Tommy Burns on a day when I'm already emotional, because I can't handle that, I'm afraid. The day that Tommy Burns died, my mum didn't text me until after I had come out of an exam at uni, because she knew I wouldn't be able to concentrate. So yeah, it's a strange day all round, strange day.
It is. You and Boy Martin, I think we should, because they won't have any fans there to gloat. And Jim Hanaway, correct, we should show Celtic class and do it. Last words on a day like today goes to Anthony Haggerty. What's your thoughts on this?
If you're talking about class and losing with honour, respect and dignity, then you do it. Simple as. But I'm with Laura on that. Whether they do it or not, I don't particularly care. But it's, but if you want to lose in the appropriate manner, then yeah, do it. It shows a bit of class, shows a bit of humility, and it shows a bit of dignity. Yeah, you're hurting for what's happened, but you're also respecting the fact that in competitive sport, another team has won the title. So yeah. You.
I love that from Mark Bradley there. Give them a Guard of Honour and then give them a beating. That's the Celtic way. It is. Beat them on the pitch.
Beat them on the pitch and shatter the invincible league season that they're going for, and that's the way you could answer that. So you've got a chance to do that. So, but like JP says, I'm not too sure that this Celtic team are capable of doing that. That's a worry.
I've not seen enough this season to suggest that they can. Tony, now we have.
John, something else. See, if you're scouting and you're doing your homework, and you're talking about players, why have you not identified that the Dundee United goalkeeper's pretty good?
Well, that's 2 games that he's performed like that, isn't it? Against us.
Right. This guy can keep the ball out the net, I have to say. Can keep hens at a midden, is an old Glasgow phrase. Right? So, so why are they not looking at someone like him? Because
we've got Scott Bain and he can save the ball with his face, Tony. So,
after it's gone through his hands, almost broke the process.
Exactly.
Replacement shirt. I thought I was going to have Barca in the back end.
It's the only way that's getting on the pitch these days.
Goalkeeping there. Let the ball through your hands but get your face in the road.
Brilliant.
I like that.
Listen, we've actually covered every single kick of the ball this season, all the ups. I'm struggling to remember many of them, and all the downs as well. And we'll continue to do so all the way through this season and beyond. I'm not sure when the setup will change, when we're back at games. I'm not quite sure, but we'll certainly continue to do it from the studio. It's always been a pleasure to get the thoughts of Anthony Haggerty, Laura Bradburn and JP Mason. And thank you all once again for getting involved on the social media channels at YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. We will be back tomorrow, Laura will be back with the ACSOM Women's Day, International Women's Day tomorrow, and I look forward to that. And again, it just shows the diversity of ACSOM, but it shouldn't even be seen as diversity. It should just be natural, normal, and that's what I'm looking forward to tomorrow. So I look forward to seeing that, Laura, and all that's left for me to say is thank you very much for joining me once again on A Celtic State of Mind.